Welcome to the Biz and Tech Podcast. My name is Blake Dowling. I'm the CEO of Aegis BizTech, headquartered in Tallahassee, Florida, and a proud Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce member. For today's PSA, look out for emails. AI is putting hacking emails on steroids. So anything that looks remotely fraudulent, let's go ahead and use our checks and balances and call and verify. Not from the phone number in the email as you're calling the hacker. Go to a separate phone number, separate contact, call the person, verify that communication. If a link, if you happen to click on it and you ignore my advice, don't enter your password. That's a pretty common attack vector. So step one, don't click. Step two, if you click, don't enter your password or credentials, and definitely don't enter your banking information. Your bank doesn't need to verify anything. They have all of your money and all of your information. That concludes our PSA. It is my pleasure to welcome Michael Dalby, President and CEO of the aforementioned Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Blake. Good to be here.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. Background, where are you from originally? How'd your career get started?
Yeah.
Let's learn a little bit more about your journey today.
Sure. So I grew up in a town called Stephenville, Texas. It's kind of in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, relatively small community. But I was fortunate to get an appointment to the Air Force Academy.
Okay.
And so I went up to Colorado Springs, Air Force Academy for 4 years, real interesting experience there. And then graduated, was in the Air Force for about 10 years. And then got out, and I was kind of wondering what I was going to do, because what I was doing in the military at the time really didn't have a civilian equivalent of any kind.
It's funny you say that. Our last guest, Tom, with Bow Stern, said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
His test said, you should be a tank driver.
Yeah.
And his dad's like, whoa, if you can't find a real job doing that,
Right.
we don't have civilian tanks. So please continue.
Right, yeah. So I knew there was such a thing as a Chamber of Commerce, and I applied for a position out in Utah, and took that job, and that kind of started my chamber career. And at the time, I just thought it would be a bridge over into the private sector and some type of business. Took that job, then another job opened up down in New Mexico where my wife's parents were living at the time. We'd never really lived close to her parents, and so I took that job. That was my second chamber job. And then I took a job in Texas with the chamber in San Angelo, Texas, out in western Texas. And at that point, I was there for about 7 years, and I thought, I guess this is what I'm going to do here for the remainder of my careers. And so then went from Texas to Indiana, to Ohio, and to Florida. So a number of different states, running chambers of commerce and economic development organizations. The first part of my career was more economic development focused. Second part, more chamber focused. So yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, 1 minute it's a calling, 1 minute it's a job.
Yeah.
1 minute it's your life's work.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
Absolutely.
So that Air Force experience, what was the call to service? You said, you got an appointment, but that was probably years in the making.
Yeah.
What was that? You could have done anything.
Sure.
How did that happen?
My dad was in the military back right at the end of World War II, and then he joined the Army National Guard, and so was in the Texas Army National Guard, and I knew that. I knew what he was doing, and would go out and meet him at different times when they would have events. And the military seemed pretty cool. And then I kind of parked that away, didn't really think about it. And then one time I was on a trip to Colorado, and the group I was with said, hey, let's stop at the Air Force Academy. So I'm with you. So, okay, sure, we'll do that. And I came back after that trip, and my dad was saying, hey, how was your vacation kind of thing? And I told him all about it. I told him, hey, we stopped by the Air Force Academy. And it was hilarious because my dad, you could just see him all of a sudden stop and go, you went to the Air Force Academy? How did you like it? Were you interested in that? Did you think that would be something cool? And so pretty soon, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, sure, Dad, that sounds kind of cool. And so then started through the process and got a congressional appointment, which was interesting in itself to just go through that process of meeting people who knew the congressman that I could get an appointment with. And,
right.
And but the whole Air Force Academy experience was just, it was really probably the major experience in my life that kind of set a pathway forward in a number of different ways, both kind of learning how to work, how to interact with individuals, learning career, different things that I learned along the course of the way. And so, yeah, I was really, really fortunate to be able to have that experience.
If you could name one thing, since you said it was so powerful, if
Yeah.
you could name one thing you learned during that time that applied to your whole life, what was it?
You can probably do a lot more than you think you can do in the time that you have to do things. Does that make sense?
Sure.
It's kind of this idea that a lot of times we limit ourselves because we think, well, I don't have the ability to do all those things at once. Not that I'm a big fan of like multitasking, but it's the idea that you can actually handle a lot of things, your brain and your capabilities. You can handle a lot of stuff coming at you at one time. And if you could do that pretty well, you can end up in certain careers that kind of like value that type of ability to kind of juggle a lot of things at one time and just keep it all going. And that was a big lesson from the Air Force Academy.
Awesome. And as far as your time in the Air Force, you were in military intelligence. Is that
did.
correct?
Yeah, I did intelligence work for the Air Force.
And you obviously didn't start there, I assume, or did you?
Well, actually, yeah, that was my first job coming right out of the academy.
Oh, cool.
I did not have, I
Okay.
was not pilot qualified, so I wasn't going to be a pilot, but got to do satellite intelligence, satellite-derived intelligence, and that kind of came the kind of the thread that ran through that component. If I'd hung in there, it was kind of a weird point in between when satellites, the military had all the satellites, nobody else really did, and about that time, Hughes Corporation and others were starting to like break out. That's when DirecTV and some of the other things started happening with civilian uses of satellites. If I stayed in a little bit longer, I might have caught that wave. But it was a great experience. I had some really great assignments. And I went back and taught at the Air Force Academy, which was kind of fun to be on the other side of the desk. And
it's always good to have that full circle moment.
Yeah,
the other side of the desk is good.
Yeah, so it was good. It was fun. It was a great
Different
experience.
challenges, but good.
Absolutely.
So has Hollywood ever gotten it right as far as an Air Force film? You know, Top Gun comes to mind, but that's the Navy.
Yeah.
But we got some planes. So what do you
Yeah,
think? Have
yeah,
they ever gotten it
yeah.
right? Can you think of a movie?
I will still to this day say that Saving Private Ryan was probably one of those films that was a real wake up call for a lot of people to go, ooh, crud, that's really what it was all about, kind of a thing, because it could seem kind of glamorous and fun in many ways, but when you're actually in combat situations, it's a whole different world, completely crazy.
Yeah,
And,
Tom Hanks is
I
doing
think
a
they
good
did
job with that current World War II
Yeah,
series. I'm
yeah.
following that.
Caught a little bit of that too. So yeah,
Because the Pacific Theater doesn't get the attention of Europe in the
Right.
history books.
Right,
And
right.
that's where my grandfather served, was in the Pacific. And,
Yeah.
a mortar landed by his tent and
Yeah.
knocked out hearing in his left ear, which he was lucky. That's
Yeah.
all it did.
Right,
But
right.
the brutality of those
Absolutely.
island campaigns, I think
Absolutely.
the show is doing a good job bringing that education to the people.
Sure.
All right, so Chamber of Commerce's. What's a proudest moment in the? We're not going to say in the Tallahassee journey because you're still in the rookie period.
8 months in. So, yeah, right.
Unless you have one off the top of your head. But
Right.
what's one of those proud moments throughout those jobs in the different communities of something the chamber was involved in and something you were involved in?
Chamber of Commerce is probably one of the most well-known kind of just brands. Like if you ask somebody, have you ever heard of the term Chamber of Commerce? Most people will say yes. Then if you say, well, do you know what they do? They're kind of like, I'm not really quite certain, something with business. So I try to explain to people that a Chamber of Commerce is a business association.
Right.
We're all about business. We're all about the economy. And you're trying to grow the economy. Now, you're trying to sometimes help your existing businesses grow and do better, and you're giving them education, experiences for networking and those kind of things to grow businesses, which is great. But every once in a while, you get an opportunity to work on a major project within the community. And oftentimes, from my experience, it's been infrastructure projects. So big infrastructure projects that had major impact on communities. So twice I had the opportunity to work in what I would call some pretty major infrastructure projects. So one of them was in Louisville, Kentucky. I was running a chamber on the Indiana side of the Ohio River, right across from Louisville. So there is no North Louisville, Kentucky. It's Indiana. And so we had the chambers that were kind of across there. We had a kind of a combined chamber of commerce. And they needed new bridges. They had one bridge that was kind of I-65, I think it was. It went straight across over from Louisville to Indiana. And it was old. It had been tried to repair multiple times. They'd never been able to get it right. The idea was not only to build one new bridge, but to build two new bridges. One that would be the main bridge across, and another one would be a bypass bridge kind of around Kentucky going up into Indiana. They'd worked on this thing for like 30 years and never been able to make it happen. And it just all the stars aligned, and I was able to work with kind of in concert with the Louisville Chamber, but then also we started working with congressional representatives in both states, governors in both states. Mitch Daniel was the governor of Indiana at the time, very very can-do governor who now is running Purdue University, I think, for the second time. He's the president of Purdue University.
That's cool.
But they were both, there was a Bashir, I think, who was governor of Kentucky. But everybody came together to make this thing happen. It was a multi-billion-dollar project, and just through working with the state and the feds and everybody, we were able to finally bring this thing across the finish line. And so I have a daughter that lives in the Louisville area still, and just the other day we were over visiting with her, and I got to drive over both bridges. And to me, it was just kind of one of those moments where it's like, wow, this. I remember the crazy stuff we went through. There was a lot of opposition and a lot of protests and stuff we had to deal with. But at the same time, you look at it now and it's like, wow, this thing is amazing. It's made a huge difference in their economy. So that was one of those projects. The other one dealt with a military installation. The first 3 chambers that I worked for had some kind of connection with the military base within their community. Mm-hmm. And one time, one of those communities, if you remember the base realignment and closure, they were closing military installations. They would do this big kind of a beauty contest, and you'd have to explain why your base was shouldn't be closed. The base at the time was square in the bullseye of, we're going to close this base. And we worked really super hard with a lot of different lobbying and some other works. Ended up not only not being closed, but expanding the operations of the base after the closure round went through. So it was, and for the community, which was only about 100,000 in population, this thing was huge. It would have decimated the community had they lost it. And so you see in both sides of those experiences where that infrastructure was so important to the community, and once it had an opportunity to get to the next level, it became even more important, and more economic activity happened because of that work. So those were kind of proud moments.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That bridge moment, I can see that. Fast forward a few years in time, you're like, I worked on that.
Yeah, it was
I helped
neat.
make this happen.
I'd already moved from Indiana to Ohio and was running the chamber in Columbus, Ohio, but I got a call from a friend who had worked in that whole thing and said, hey, we were doing the ribbon cutting for the bridge, and they gave you a shout out. And I thought, hey, that's kind of cool there. But
Legacy, man.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a neat experience.
That's great. All right, so you're in your first year with the Tallahassee Chamber.
Yes.
What's a day in the life like for you, for our audience that might not know exactly what a chamber does? And while you think on that, do you know the first instance the phrasing Chamber of Commerce was used? I did some random Googling.
I think it's like in the 1700s or something like that.
Well, Mr. Knowledge.
Thank you,
It was early 1700s in France. Chamber de Commerce. They rallied in the dungeon, to chat about some community interests. And a movement was born. All right, so first year, day in the life, what are you doing with your time?
When you're early on in a new community, a lot of it's just getting out and meeting with people. It's meeting with business people, obviously, that's our clientele, but it's also meeting with leaders within the community, leaders in government, leaders in not-for-profit organizations, because you're both the voice for business, but you're also a voice for your community. We're community cheerleaders. And so you're trying to learn a lot about the community and how it works and how it functions. So a given day usually starts with either it's a chamber event that we're hosting that we're trying to, again, give education and networking opportunities to our members. And other times it may be just going out and having a one-on-one, a breakfast, coffee, whatever it may be with somebody, and just trying to learn a little bit more about what's going on and what's happening. All that's a big education effort for me. Right now, I mean, you're kind of now starting to get into the point where, now we're kind of starting to hit stride and trying to figure out, what are these next things we're really going to push for as the business community? I think one of the real keys here is finding ways to expand the economic opportunity in Tallahassee. It's economic development, the classical idea of go out and recruit some new industry into the community. That's certainly still a part of the equation. But it's also grow your own, grow and help the businesses that you have grow and expand. But also look at those new economic opportunities. And I think personally that the cooperative effort between FSU Health and TMH holds tremendous opportunity for our community in terms of really becoming a focal point for rural health innovations. That rural health is a challenge not just in the United States but worldwide. And if you can become kind of a leader in expertise and in innovation in rural health, I think there's some real opportunities to put a real stake in the ground for Tallahassee and for North Central Florida.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So as far as site visits, I know some of the missions you've been on. Any organization, any experience, like the Gainesville trip, or did that sub visit happen?
Yeah, well, so
Share us a story like that.
the whole concept of economic development sounds, everybody knows when you see the big building go up and the big ribbon cutting, and it's like, hey, this all happened. This is great. New jobs for our community. But what you don't see is that oftentimes it's a 10 or 20-year effort before you got to that building.
Sure.
That effort, had to start with people making commitments about infrastructure, making commitments about roads, about sites and locations where you said, this is where we could do something big if we could ever get the chance to have that opportunity to recruit new industry into our community. So you're prepping the land and the available place to do that at. Then you're trying to get everybody around the ideas of our workforce and our talent. Do we have the workforce and talent to attract certain industries into our community? Again, that's an effort through colleges, universities, everybody kind of getting on board. But I love the story. Like when we went over took a small group to Gainesville to look at their biotech innovation kind of ecosystem that they've built. And you go out there and you see these business parks that they have established with all the different kinds of companies in them. You go to the campus itself, you see UF Innovate, I think it is, and you realize everybody would tell us like, hey, this looks pretty cool. I know you guys are getting jazzed up about it. 30-year process. And it reminded me of a trip I took long ago to Palm Beach. And Palm Beach and the county, they had decided that they needed to be more than just the beach area. And the county, is it Palm County? I can't remember Palm Beach County. It's huge. It's one of the largest counties in Florida. And so a lot of the space was just really not being used. It was kind of Everglades-ish kind of area. But people realized they had the ability to host some major economic engines, industrial kind of type things. And we took a small group down to there, and in the course of that conversation, they said, this is a 30-year process that we've been on to get to the point we're at today. So I think it's having the vision and wherewithal for a community to say, this is where we want to be in 30 years from now. We want to maintain our beauty. We want to maintain the charm that we feel like we have in the community, but we want to have the economic opportunity for our citizens, for their families, for their children. We want to be able to attract the money into our community, the investment into our community that's going to help us to have support to our arts and culture, to our parks, whatever it may be. We want that to happen. Here's how we're going to build this for the next 30 years. And so that was a lesson early on that you begin to realize that it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time.
Yeah, overnight success. Once you see the news articles and the media blitz, there's 20 years to get there.
Absolutely.
I'm reading a book about the early jam band scene, Blues Traveler, Widespread Panic, the Spin Doctors, Fish, bands like that. And the Spin Doctors, they said, it took us 5 years to be an overnight success. Our record label hated us because they were all grunge bands. Anyway, it's an interesting snapshot of time. So if you could time travel, where would you go? Anywhere, anytime.
I saw that question that you'd put down there. It's an interesting one. There are times in I think our country where we were all just super focused in on particular efforts, and I was
That's
pretty.
the nature of our society.
Yeah, I was a pretty young kid when the whole space race kind of took off, and so in that early '60s to then '69 and putting a person on the moon, that was kind of part of my life that just kind of like became an everyday thing. I mean, you're wondering, what was the next space mission? Were we going to see a spacewalk on television? What was going forward in the missions? All those things were just so incredible to me to now as you get older, you realize, what did it take to make all that happen? And there's been some excellent books that have been written about that whole process there. But to me, there's part where even though I lived it, I was there, I would still love to go back now with kind of the knowledge I have about building these kind of huge, innovative moonshot ideas and kind of go back and just tease apart how it all kind of took place, everything that had to happen to bring that together. To me, that was just one of those times in America where it was like, it wasn't necessarily around a war. It wasn't necessarily around a depression. It was just an effort that we said, this is important. We should do this. And so many innovations and things that have spun out from that. Like I said today, the idea that we take for granted so many things like GPS or satellite communications, just our phones that work off of that. All that started back then. And so to me, that was one of those times when it was like, whoa, we were really, getting it right there. And so, and huge accomplishments.
I mean, NASA was such a huge part of our world.
Yeah. Here in Florida,
and it's starting to get, that hype again, I think, from a big picture level.
Yeah.
Which is cool, because it should. And
it
that
is.
most recent trek around the moon was pretty fascinating to watch.
Yes, absolutely.
Greatest American. Who do you think that is?
Wow.
And you can't list 5.
Okay.
That's the common default. Well.
Okay. So, wow, that is so interesting because, greatest, and you're sitting there going, okay, like had the most impact, had the, came at a critical time when you were trying to save, the country or something like that. Those are all, each one of those, you think of these individuals that have had that kind of influence over our country. Or over us individually as a people. For me, there was a time period where as a country, we were really kind of transitioning. And Thomas Jefferson gets a lot of, positives and negatives about Thomas Jefferson of various types. But it was interesting at the time in the country, again, and I don't mean to keep harping on a word here, but he had a vision. He had a vision for what the nation could be. And I think that that Jeffersonian vision really propelled the nation in so many ways for multiple years going forward. Not just the Louisiana Purchase, but just the idea of, okay, I know that natural resources are going to be really important as we go forward as a country. How do we develop that? How do we make that happen? And he had a vision for that. And I think that was one of those instances where you had a leader who had obviously been important in the just the founding of the nation, but also not just that. It didn't just stop there and then he went, "Yep, that's what I did," and went on from there. It was now he's president and now he says, we should go farther with this. Here we should really think more long term and what it's going to take to build a great nation of the world. And to me, that was he's one of those individuals that you really dig in, you realize, wow, there was a real vision there that he had, and we benefited from it.
Hear, hear. So the best lesson that you've ever been taught, and then corresponding, the best lesson that you have ever taught.
Yeah. Early on, when you get into chamber work, you can get really sucked into the political scene. And a lot of the first couple of jobs I had, because we had military installations, we had a lot of lobbying work that we do in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. And I had one day I was with a guy in Washington. We were walking around. I was just super jazzed, fired up. I was probably in my mid-late 30s or something like that. And it was like, this is so cool. We're just here with all these congressmen and senators and heads of, cabinet members and stuff having these conversations. And then you'd go out, and of course we'd always have what I used to call lobbyist meals, which were like meals that were way expensive, and you were having the best of the best. It was like, this is crazy. And a guy, we were walking down the street, kind of transitioning from one meeting, kind of was listening to me, and he said, "Hey, don't inhale this stuff. You can kind of be a part of it and all, but you don't want to inhale it, because then you'll think you're a pretty big deal, and you're making these things happen, and you're not making these happen. There's a lot of people behind us that actually do the work and make things happen. We get fortunate that we get to be the ones that kind of get to be the front person or the person in the photo or something like that, but we're not making this happen. There's a lot of other people behind us, down to plumbers and technicians and electricians and things like that really make things happen. And I've thought on that conversation a lot of times, that's like, you can get kind of like into things and really feel like, yeah, I'm a big dog. I'm pretty hot at this whole thing. And you realize, no, you can't make this, because you can't do it by yourself. There's no way you can make it happen by yourself. It's got to take a lot of other people to make those things happen.
That's huge. That's a great lesson.
Yeah, so that was the first one. The second one that I tried to teach other people is, and this is kind of goofy because it comes off of Dr. Phil quote, but one time Dr. Phil, he always has these crazy people and they have the issues and things they're talking about. And he said it one time, no matter how thin the pancake, it has two sides. And the whole concept is that whatever issue you're dealing with and talking about, you need to realize there's two sides to this. And that has helped me teach so many other people about, look, I know you think that this is all one way, how could anybody think otherwise than what you're thinking? But you probably ought to look and see what's the other side of that issue.
True story. Lesson for everyone there.
Yeah, because there's other sides and there's things you may not really be seeing and be understanding. And this, and particularly as we move really fast in this age, in this digital age, you need to pause sometimes and go, maybe I ought to talk to somebody on the other side of that issue so that I at least understand or have an appreciation for what their point is.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So as far as Tallahassee goes, and where we are, what do you see foundational as part of your mission, as far as the team in Tallahassee pushing us forward to success? What does success look like in 1 year?
Yeah, wow. We've had to make a lot of adjustments internally. It's natural that happens. New leader comes in. You've got staff people who maybe say, hey, I want to go off and do something else, which is great. But it's just now kind of rebuilding a team around us, which now the team oftentimes, our board of directors is relatively young. If you look at when I first started in chamber work about 25 years ago, the board of directors of a chamber would be in their late 50s, early 60s, maybe even 70s. As I've gone forward, and now you come here in Tallahassee, I think the average age of our chamber board is probably around 45, something like that. So it's much younger. It's a next generation. Okay, so number one, we're in the next generation of leadership. And what is that next generation wanting to see happen? What are they wanting to see their community to become? Right. And to me, there's some key elements here. One is that this is a naturally beautiful area. I mean, it just is. North Florida, different from South Florida. You got beaches and things in the coastal areas, but here's an area where you've got rolling hills, you've got vegetation, the trees, beautiful canopied areas, all these kind of things. That's super cool, and that's something you want to keep. You want to make sure you maintain that. At the same time, you want to try to grow the economy and make sure there are economic opportunities exist and are being expanded within our region. So one of the things that we've kind of said early on is let's take an assessment of all our assets as a community. And one of the big assets is talent. When you've got two universities, a very high achieving state college, you've got other educational things around you, those are assets that many other communities would die for. You've got tremendous talent generators in your community. The idea is how do you try to harness more of that talent to kind of stay here in the area and help build that next economy. I really commend all the efforts that are being done about innovation and whether it's Ignite at FSU, Domi Station here as a community, any of those kind of efforts, you're just trying to try to support and help those innovative ideas to develop into a viable business. And hopefully it becomes the next economic generator within your community. Right. University of Florida has, over that 30 years, has really started to develop more and more businesses that are either were spun out from U of F or were attracted to the region because of all the biotechnology things that are happening there. I think we've got the opportunity to build that type of attraction here. With that talent. I'm not certain that we know exactly what it's going to lay up on right now, where it's going to rest, but I do think from the healthcare standpoint, there's a lot of possibilities there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've seen Gainesville obviously grow from when I was there in the 90s to what it is today. Yeah. I did a campus tour a couple months ago as part of the Gator 100 celebrations, and it blows my mind. They're doing some cool stuff here. Yeah. And we can do all of that here too.
Absolutely.
Our producer Josh is a UF grad, so go Gators, level up media. Awesome. Well, as we wrap today, what is the greatest sport in the history of mankind?
Are we pushing for soccer, football?
I'm not lobbying for anyone. It is, in my mind, it's a dark time for sports because we're in the off season. There's no college football.
Got it. Right.
But we're enjoying hockey and soccer and basketball and, everything else that's going on. College World Series. So what do you got? What's your favorite?
So I was fortunate to run the chamber in Columbus, Ohio, home of Ohio State University. And I was fortunate at one point to go to an Ohio State-Michigan game.
Wow,
and,
that's as big as it gets.
I'm sure there's some people who've been to one, but if you've never been to that thing and be on the ground, it's crazy wild. It is so loud. You've got a stadium that holds 104,000 people. It's completely packed. There's not an empty seat in the whole place. The game that I went to was one of those typical, Big Ten snowy days where like the snowflakes were falling, but we were all bundled up out there, and Ohio State won, but it was just crazy to watch the energy of the fans and how everybody was just so passionate about it all. But then, you walk out and we're all like, okay, now we're going to move on and go to the next thing. But it was a crazy, wild experience to be a part of. And so I was grateful that I got an opportunity to do something like that. So college sports, I do like college football. So, yeah.
That's a great answer. We commend you on that answer. I grew up around the Alabama-Auburn game, Alabama-Tennessee game.
Sure.
My entire family went to Alabama. It seems, not all of them, but it seems like it. My grandmother actually lived with Bear Bryant's wife in the Alpha Gam house while they were at Alabama. Both my granddads were at Alabama. My uncle played on a name-it team, so I never heard the end of my decision to go to the University of Florida.
Right.
I was the black sheep of the family. But there we are. Well, that was a great conversation. Thank you for your service to our nation. Thank you for your service to our community. Look forward to working with you and the Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce team on everything that you're involved in. I think together, having a 20-year view of the chamber, it's great because I can see it from a chamber conference perspective, an Access Tallahassee perspective before I was removed from that group because of aging out. Morning leads groups, business after hours, side projects, volunteerism. It's a really well-rounded experience. It's a really great organization and program.
Thank you.
And thanks for all you do.
You bet. Thank you.
And thanks to the chamber staff out there for all you do. We couldn't do it without you. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrap on today's episode. And as we close, my intro PSA was about cybersecurity. Always keep cybersecurity top of mind. And for anyone listening that said, well, why do I get these emails that ask for my passwords? Because they're not doing anything malicious. They're hoping you will fall for them because most traditional malware gets blocked, but it's a link asking for information. It's only a hack if you give them the information. Let's stop the giving. Let's stop the hacking. And thank you for listening today on the Biz and Tech Podcast. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Mr. Lorch. And we will see you next time. Have a great day.